my name is Aubrey. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm here with all of the books that I read in March. March ended up being a pretty good reading month for me. It was a little bit of a slow start and I wasn't able to get to everything on my TBR, but I got pretty close and I am really happy with all of the books that I read. I ended up with 3 5-star books this month as well as a 4.5. So it was a very, very good reading month in terms of quality. So let's just go through them. The first book that I read in March was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. And this is quite a chunky one. So this is part of why March had a slow start for me because I was getting through this bad boy. I ended up absolutely loving this. It was so atmospheric. It had perfect fairy tale vibes. The writing was lyrical and evocative, and I just enjoyed my time with this thoroughly. We're following 3 different young women. We're following Miriam, who is the daughter of a moneylender, and it turns out that her father is actually not so good at being a moneylender. He's very kind-hearted, and he can't really bring himself to get back any of the money that he has lent out. And because of his kind-heartedness, he has lowered his family into poverty, basically. They never seem to have enough food on the table. Their clothes are getting worn and ratty. Finally, when Miriam's mother falls ill, Miriam decides that she has had enough and she is going to take her father's job upon herself. And so she starts going around the town asking for the townspeople to give back the money that they owe. And if they can't pay in money, then they will pay in grain or wool or labor. Soon she earns the reputation of being able to turn silver into gold, which attracts the attention of a powerful fairy lord. He comes to her doorstep with 3 impossible tasks, and if she fails at the tasks, she will die. And if she succeeds at the tasks, then she will get to be fairy queen. We are also following Wanda, who is the daughter of an abusive farmer, as she gets roped into Miriam's orbit because her father owes Miriam's family money. And since he can't pay the money back, Miriam suggests that Wanda come and work for them until that debt is paid off. And then we're also following Irina, and I can't remember exactly what Irina's official title is, but her father is an important figurehead in the political landscape. However, Irina herself is not beautiful. This is an issue because her father would love to marry her off to the Tsar. That is until they come upon some jewelry forged from fey metal that seems to be enchanted and grants the wearer an undeniable allure. And so we're following all 3 of these young women as their stories interweave, and it's just beautiful. It's beautifully done. Again, it's just so atmospheric and luscious. All of the characters are really interesting. Some of them are lovable, some of them are not. I would say that all 3 of the women are at the very least, clever and resourceful and determined in all of their own individual ways. The side characters are all pretty interesting. The villains are also really dynamic and fun, and they have varying layers to them that I really appreciated. It's just a really good story. It was just a very good story. I loved how everything was interwoven and the ways in which these women were connected to each other. I just absolutely loved this. And if you love fairy tales, I think that you will love this as well. And I gave this 5 stars. Next, I read 3 horror books for a vlog, and the first book in that vlog was The Reformatory by Tananarive Due, and this is a historical horror novel set in 1950 in the Jim Crow South, and we are following Robbie, who is a 12-year-old black boy who kicks the knee of the son of the largest landowner in town. Without trial, without hearing his side of the story, he is sentenced to 6 months at Gracetown School for Boys, also known as the Reformatory. And while technically a school where he will still receive lessons, it is also highly regarded to be a prison. The boys are forced into labor of varying degrees. Boys can be brutally punished, being insubordinate or breaking rules. And there have been a fair amount of deaths at the Reformatory. The Reformatory has its own graveyard, and the deaths that do take place at the Reformatory are often very mysterious. The families are not told what happened. There's a lot of unchecked power going on here at the school. I'm sorry if anything shifted, my camera battery died. So we're following Robbie as he is experiencing the horrors of the Reformatory. The Reformatory seems to be inundated with haints, and haints are ghosts, and they are the ghosts of these dead boys, and they're everywhere. They're in the showers, they're in their bedrooms, they're in the kitchens, they're on the grounds. We are also following Robbie's older sister, who is trying her damnedest to get Robbie out of there. It is similar to Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, where I feel like the historical elements in and of themselves are way more horrifying than any of the supernatural stuff going on. While some of the haints can be a little bit unsettling, I would say that most of the horrors in this book are in fact caused by people. And I think this book did a fantastic job at several things. First of all, the pacing of this book was incredible. It is relentless pacing, and I couldn't put this book down. It is over 500 pages, but it read so quickly. I don't know if I've ever been so tense reading a book. I don't know if I've ever been so worried about characters before reading a book. Pacing, impeccable. Character work, impeccable. There are an array of different characters in this book, and both Robbie and Gloria are super lovable and endearing. I felt like every single character had so many interesting layers. Everyone was well fleshed out. I felt like I understood everyone's motivations and reasons for doing things throughout the novel. I felt like Tananarive Due did such an excellent job of showing how suffocating this level of like structural racism is for everyone. There are several white characters throughout the book that like want to help but can't, because being too much of a sympathizer can put you in just as much danger as being black. Like, being white doesn't save you from this kind of racism, you know, where racism is that baked into every tiny piece of society, from, you know, the judges to the policemen to your neighbors and your friends. Even if you think that segregation is wrong, you can't speak out about it because the KKK will come and burn your house down, right? I just found that exploration to be so fascinating. And again, I just thought that it was done so well. Every character is multidimensional. Generally speaking, I feel like it is very clearly the system, the society that is at fault here. So yeah, this was truly such an impressive book on so many levels. I highly recommend it, and I also gave this 5 stars. Next, for that vlog, I read American Rapture by C.J. Leede, and this is about a pandemic sweeping America, where the final stages of this illness result in aggressive, feral lust. And we are following our main character, Sophie, a good Catholic girl, as she has to traverse this new hellish landscape. Generally speaking, this is just a post-apocalyptic, somewhat zombie-ish novel. The way that the infected are completely void of their original personalities, how they're so aggressive, the way that the virus spreads through like bodily fluids, very similar to zombie stories. However, I think what this book has going for it is the fact that it's through this lens of this like devoutly religious person, you know, this 17-year-old girl who has been raised completely sheltered. Like, her parents don't let her read the news. She's only allowed very strict subject matter when it comes to books and other media. Her diet is very controlled. Like, her parents make her lock her windows at night in case the demons come in. You know, it's like that kind of upbringing. And so experiencing this particular kind of pandemic through the lens of this particular kind of character and watching her arc, unlearning things that she's been taught, you know, meeting new people, coming to new conclusions. I really, really enjoyed Sophie's journey. I enjoyed this like post-apocalyptic landscape. I often find stories like this to be very unputdownable just because there's something about the end of the world, right? Society crumbling and having to survive, and the found family you meet along the way, the ways in which like utter catastrophe can morph you into a completely different person. So yeah, I did really enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars. I will say it is not for the faint of heart, and I would definitely look up trigger warnings because there is a lot in here that I think would be particularly difficult for some people. So tread carefully, but you know, if it sounds good to you, I would definitely give it a try because I really liked it. Lastly, for that vlog, I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. This was such a ride. This is maybe the scariest book I've ever read. This book scared the absolute shit out of me. I could only read this during the day, and when I made the stupid decision to finish this book up before bed because it was right at the end and I was so close and I had to know how it was going to end, I did in fact sleep with the light on. So there are images that are burned into my brain after reading this book. I don't know if I will ever be able to go into an attic or a basement ever again. So what is it about? Okay, we are following our main character Eve, who has just bought this new old Victorian house with her partner Charlie. And very soon after moving in, Eve hears a knock at the door, and standing outside is this man and his beautiful family, his wife, his 3 children. They're standing out in the cold, and the man says,
"Hey, so this was my childhood home, and I used to live here. Do you think that we could come in and take a look around?"
And Eve is like, I really don't want these people in my house. Like, I was gonna heat up some leftovers. Like, Charlie and I were gonna have a really, like, chill evening. And, like, I don't really feel like dealing with this. But they look so cold and it seems so innocent. Okay, fine. You can come and look around. 10-15 minutes tops. So the family comes in. They start looking around, everything seems fine, but just before they are finally about to leave, they notice that the youngest daughter is missing. She's no longer with the family. Where did she go? And the parents roll their eyes and they say, oh, our daughter is a fan of hide and seek. She must be hiding somewhere in the house. So they look around the house and they discover that she's hiding in the creepy basement, but she's like tucked in like a little area that they can't actually get to. So nobody can drag her out of there. They just know that she's there. And so the family's like, okay, let's just go back upstairs and we'll wait her out. And wouldn't you know that even when the daughter finally does come out of the basement, well, it started to snow and they can't leave now because the roads are too bad and the bridge out of their neighborhood is closed. These people will just not get the hell out of the house. And on top of that, just like weird things keep happening. Part of the fun, like part of what is so delicious about this book is that like you can't tell if like the family is creepy and the house is haunted or if Eve herself is just like going crazy because she'll make these like really paranoid observations. When you're inside of her head, you're like, yeah, that's creepy, that's weird. But if you look at it objectively, it's like, well, there could be an explanation for that. Like it could just be normal and you don't know. And so for a lot of the book, it is that kind of story where you're like, is something supernatural happening here, or is the protagonist slowly descending into madness? I ended up really, really loving this. This was another 5-star book. Now, I think that this is not a book for everyone, and I think a fair amount of people will be very dissatisfied with the ending because yes, the book itself does not give you a lot of answers. However, the physical book especially is really asking you to engage with it. So like throughout the story, there are these like documents in between chapters of the actual story. And these documents contain information about like the house itself, weird occurrences that have happened around the house, strange things that the characters themselves reference throughout the story. And at the end of these documents, there's like a little bit of Morse code for you to decode. And the bits of code spell out words, and throughout the entire book, there's like a message that's revealed to you through the Morse code. There was at least one document in here that had like random capitalized letters that I went through and like spelled out whatever message that was. There are other documents that have like really weird symbols. And at the beginning of the book, there's this like creepy map. And over here, there are letters corresponding to some of those symbols. And so it's a book that's asking you, like I said, to engage with it. It wants you to decode and put puzzle pieces together and come up with your own theories and ideas and come to your own conclusions. And so I think that for some readers, that is going to be very frustrating and they are going to want actual definitive answers. And there are going to be some readers that really love like the weirdness of it all and the mystery of it all and will want to engage with it on the level that the book is asking you to. I will also say that after I read this, I was like scouring through Reddit and reading through all the theories and just seeing what people had to say about it. And one person said that they contacted the author to see if there was more of this like code for the symbols and stuff. And they responded, Not yet. So that leads me to believe that there might be another book either set in the same universe or following the same characters. So I think that in the future we may get more answers than we got in this book. But even without more answers, I still think this is like very solidly a 5-star book. At least it was for me. Terrifying. Like so unsettling. I cannot begin to explain to you like how unsettling this book is. I don't think I've ever read a book that scared me this badly. So yeah, again, definitely not for the faint of heart, but if you like horror, I feel like this is an absolute must read. So after that, I read Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey, and this is a literary fiction mystery with like a little bit of a love story. In this, we're following Inti Flynn, who is part of a environmentalist team who is trying to reintegrate wild wolves into the Scottish Highlands. Because wolves were hunted down and eradicated, the herbivore population has like gotten completely out of control and has started to destroy the forests. And so the hope is that reintroducing their natural predator will get things back into balance, you know? However, the locals are not super happy about wolves being reintroduced. A lot of them own sheep and cows and horses, and they're very concerned about wolves eating their livestock or attacking people. And so Inti and her team have to face a lot of pushback from the people that live in this community. And so a lot of the book is tackling like the nuances of that and like how to tactfully approach something that delicate, which our main character Inti is not all that good at doing. And about halfway through the story, it turns into a bit of a murder mystery. So Inti comes upon the body of a man who seems to have been killed by wolves. And if he wasn't killed by wolves, then he was killed in a way that made it seem like he was killed by wolves, perhaps by someone in the community that's very unhappy about the wolves being here. Because of course, if a wolf killed someone, then that is an excuse for them all to be eradicated once again. So Inti has to investigate and discover, you know, did the wolves do this or did someone kill this man? There are a lot of different interpersonal relationships going on. Inti has brought along her twin sister who has undergone some kind of deep trauma. We also have the local sheriff who Inti kind of has like an ongoing fling with. And you know, there's a host of other characters throughout the town as well. I did enjoy this. I gave it a 3.75. I enjoyed the writing and I enjoyed the atmosphere, and I did enjoy our main character Inti. I really like following like a flawed main character because Inti is very standoffish. She's very abrasive. She doesn't let people in. She just wants to be left alone with her sister and her wolves. And so I liked her journey of like learning to let people in and let people love her. But at the same time, I do feel like this book was too short and too long at the same time. It's only 250 pages, and I felt like there were some parts that really needed to be fleshed out more and other parts that really dragged. I definitely felt like there were certain character moments and character jumps that I, again, felt like really needed a little bit more development and oomph. I also felt like the environmental messages were a little bit heavy-handed. Charlotte McConaughey really does like beat you over the head with a few of these environmental lessons. And I'm saying that as somebody who majored in environmental studies. I care deeply about the environment and, you know, our relationship with nature and animals. And yet, you know, I don't like being told what to think. Nobody likes being told what to think. I think there were a couple of moments in here that I just felt like this really should have been a lot more subtle so that people can make up their own minds about what their own opinions are in this matter. You can kind of lead people to a conclusion without having to like slap them in the face with it, you know? So yeah, definitely enjoyable. Like I said, I liked the writing. It was very atmospheric and it was definitely entertaining. I am looking forward to Charlotte McConaughey's newest book, Wild Dark Shore, which I've been hearing really good things about. So I will be giving her another try. All right. And then I picked up yet another horror novel this month. I picked up Hungerstone by Kate Dunn. And so this is like a gothic vampire Camilla retelling. It's set at the height of the Industrial Revolution, and we are following Lenore. Lenore's marriage with her husband Henry has like completely soured. She has failed to produce an heir, but he has just purchased this large gothic estate in the British moorlands, and on their way to their new estate, they crash into another carriage and thus brings into their lives the mysterious Carmilla. You know, she is seemingly sick and injured from this carriage crash. She needs to stay with them at their new estate. Lenore is finding herself more and more overwhelmed with the responsibility of this estate. She's also getting increasingly ill. She's having bouts of like stomach cramps and vomiting, and generally she just feels fatigued and irritable. And Carmilla, being this extra thing on her plate, this extra person to take care of, is very frustrating for her. But at the same time, Carmilla holds an allure that Lenore can't shake. Before long, girls on the estate and girls in the local village start to be consumed by a terrible hunger. I ended up really enjoying this. It's a very gothic, evocative writing style. I will say that it is more of a female revenge story than a vampire story. That being said though, I still really loved it. It's a slower paced book, but it has that undercurrent of dread. It has that undercurrent of like something terrible is going to happen. Perhaps something terrible is already happening. And I just really liked it. I mean, I'm very partial to a female rage story, a female revenge story. This one definitely checked a lot of boxes for me. I will say that Carmilla is not really a center focus of this novel. She is more of like a plot device. She doesn't really get to be her own character. We are only ever following Lenore's perspective, which for me ended up being still a very interesting and entertaining perspective. It is sapphic and there is a lot of sapphic tension, and I just really liked it. I gave this one 4 stars, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who loves like a gothic tale with like vampiric undertones, a revenge story. And next, I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I'm sure you all know what this is about. If you don't, this is Haymitch's story. It is a prequel to The Hunger Games. I just had so much fun with this. It is just such a delight that in the year of our Lord 2025, we are still getting books set in the Hunger Games world. The world building around the Hunger Games and the Capitol is just getting so rich and interesting, and it just gets more rich and more interesting. Was this an unnecessary prequel? I mean, I would argue that most prequels are unnecessary, but it was still so enjoyable to follow Haymitch, to see early threads of his personality and who we come to know in the actual Hunger Games trilogy, to know the full extent of what happened to him, and to get to experience another Hunger Games, like another actual Hunger Games. In Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we're following President Snow, and while there is technically a Hunger Games in that book, you know, it's a little janky, right? It's still one of like the very early Hunger Games. Also, because it's told from his perspective, we don't actually get to be in the Hunger Games. In this, we're actually like back in the arena. It is just as terrifying and gruesome and heartbreaking as any of the other Hunger Games we have experienced. And while you know how it ends, it's still a gut punch. While I definitely would not recommend reading these in chronological order on a first read through, someday in the future when I reread these books, I think it would be very interesting to read them chronologically, because there are a lot of interesting parallels between President Snow and Haymitch, and also a lot of interesting parallels between Haymitch and Katniss. And so there's just, I don't know, there's like a lot of like interesting interweaving of themes and patterns and symbolism. Full disclosure, it is the very last day of March and I finished this book today. So I need a little bit more time to like fully parse out my feelings on it and work through some of my full thoughts on this book. But as it is, I really loved it. I gave this 4.5 stars. The fact that these books have even more relevancy than they did when they first came out is truly terrifying in its own right. Suzanne Collins just has so much to say about authoritarianism and capitalism and rebellion and freedom and the human spirit. I mean, these books continue to hit. And I don't know, I hope she keeps coming out with them. All right, well, that is it for my March wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in watching my horror reading vlog, I will leave that here. And if you want to see what I'm reading in April, I will leave that here. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I hope to see you next time. Bye.